Oh, that'd be like
I'm
the
not
first
gonna kill him.
stream.
That's why I'm using a taser,
Hear about
not a
me
gun.
tasing children.
Think with your head for once.
Alright, it says streaming, says status bad, which is a good sign all in all. All things considered.
Status bad.
Yeah, it just says stream status, and then in all caps, red letters, bad. Like, that's a good old Radix stream for you. It's not telling me the quality of the bitrate, it's telling me the quality of entertainment right from the first few seconds. So, let me get the jazz music to make it worse and probably lag out my computer.
Oh, fuck me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a weird stream where I teach Twisted about Japanese internment during World War II. Because he came to me yesterday and said, he had just heard of Manzanar, apparently. And I'm like, okay, so to be clear, you haven't heard of Japanese internment during World War II? And he said no. And, I was just alarmed. I didn't even have time to write something up. I'm like, we have to fix this now. So, I decided to make a stream out of it. Now, you might say, now, Radix, I don't think you're sincere, because you have Jar Jar Binks in Shrek in front of a camp. And, well, I don't have any counter to that, but...
That's pretty accurate, actually.
Indeed. So... we're going to be teaching Twisted about some internment camp stuff here. I have my notes ready.
Uh-oh.
I know you have a pizza coming, Twisted, so don't pull what you did on that one Radio Rags and just leave me standing here talking while you just go off. Just feel free to give me some prior notice. Make sure I know you gave me prior notice, and then I can stall until you return with your pizza.
I mean, yeah, okay, sure, yeah.
Let's see, this is sort of a class open lecture type thing, so interrupt me, ask questions, react, do whatever. This is for your benefit as much as it is for me.
That's not how my teacher taught me to do things. We raised our hand and told us to shut the fuck up.
Your teacher's a coward. Your teacher can't face the music.
I literally, last night, speaking of this topic, I guess, I had dinner with a buddy of mine last night, that's why I couldn't do it last night.
Mm-hmm.
And I started asking him, I was like, hey, do you know about this at all? And this guy is an AP student. I mean, straight A's, like 4.0 GPA, that kind of kid. And he went, wait, what?
Oh, that's interesting. It might...
apparently, it's not part of the curriculum here in Georgia.
Huh.
Because I thought about it. Actually, I even kind of looked through like my old textbook I have over at the other room. And we only touched on like World War II for about half a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then dropped. We spent fucking 3 weeks on the First World War.
Oh, no. World War One, that's where it's at. That's the most impactful thing to today's society. World War II, we can give it a little look-see, but,
I wonder how German history books are. It's like, this time from 43 to 49, and not much happened.
Well, the Germans, that's pretty much the only thing Germans talk about in history is their role in World War II, because they are very, self-hating and apologetic for it.
We're sorry, Jews. We are very sorry.
Indeed.
Here is some Haagen-Dazs.
Some what?
Haagen-Dazs. Even though I don't think that's German.
Okay.
Is that Swedish?
So maybe I overestimate how much the topic is covered. If any of you learned about Japanese internment during World War II, feel free to drop it in the chat whether you did or did not. Let's take a poll of the room. But, I was under the impression, although I don't remember my history classes. Most of the history I know I taught myself, so I don't actually remember if it was ever taught in school. I don't know if I only know about Japanese internment because it's a Japanese thing, and so it might just be something Japanese people know. I don't know. I doubt it's that though.
Sorry, Terso Flex got me.
Well, I missed the German Holy Roman Empire.
No, the delivery guy's gonna take you to camp. You know what I realized you can do, by the way, with your stream is you can make it little screen capture and it'll light up on the screen whenever we're talking. When I'm talking, Shrek will light up. When you're talking, Jar Jar will light up.
Yeah, but except I have my sensitivity set to a way that it's always lighting up.
So this is pretty accurate. Oh yeah, you're a fan.
Yeah, and also, the mic's always on. It doesn't... I don't trust Discord sensitivity because it's been bad in the past with me, so I just have it just completely... Any micron of sound will be heard. Even when I turned off my fans, it's going to be green the entire time.
I mean, I guess that shows really good for my mic because I have my sensitivity turned off as well on Discord, and it just goes quiet on my side.
Ultrox says, I don't know if I ever learned about it in school. I definitely know about it, though. Alright. So I have a list of historical events, or historical questions I just want to quiz you on, just to see if you can identify when something is a thing that happened, and if I made it up on the spot.
Oh, I love these games. Let's go.
So, slavery in the United States. Was that a thing, or did that never happen?
Fake news.
Alright.
Yeah, it happened.
Okay, so here we have a multiple choice question. Which of these 3 Asian countries were once a territory of the United States? A, the Philippines, B,
Philippines.
Indonesia, or C, Brunei? Philippines, right? So, did this event happen? I'll say the event, I'll say the date, and I'll give a little description of it. The Spanish-American War, 1898. Conflict between the United States and the Spanish Empire that saw the country of Cuba gain independence.
No.
The Spanish-American War did happen.
Wow. It makes, again, it's one of the things that, yeah, looking back, yeah, it makes sense. Georgia had really shitty schools.
In fact, the Spanish-American War was the war we won the Philippines. Took it from Spain.
Oh, wait. Yeah, okay, yeah, and I'm with you now. Yeah, I'm with you.
There we go. Excellent. All right.
No, I did. Yeah, I'm with you now. I do remember this.
The Sino-American War, 1867 to 1868, began after a dispute with the tea trade between the Chinese port of Canton and an American ship called the USS Sacramento. Because of the superiority of American firepower, Qing China was swiftly defeated and had to concede trading rights to the United States.
I'm gonna say no on that one.
And you'd be right. That did not happen. I made that up.
Yeah, that one just like no, I don't. That doesn't sound like familiar at all. I mean, especially Qing China. Is that a fucking place?
Yes, that's the Qing Dynasty.
Oh, makes sense.
All right, so you got it right that I was wrong, but you did not have the right reason.
Well, no, that was just one of my things. Like Qing China sounds racist as shit.
That was China from like the late 1700s to about 1914-ish. All right. The Red Rebellion, a communist uprising from the black community in Illinois in 1917 that was put down by General James Pershing.
What was it called again?
The Red Rebellion.
I personally never heard of it.
And you'd be right, that is a made-up event.
Okay.
The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848.
Is this the Alamo?
No. War in which the United States and Mexico went to war. The war saw America defeat Mexico and gain much of Mexico's land.
Oh, yeah. That was over the California territory and all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the Alamo was in the Texan War of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
A joke, but yeah.
All right. The Holocaust, 1941 to 1945. Various so-called undesirables, most prominently Jewish people, were systematically executed in Germany and German-occupied or Allied territory.
The Jews and Gypsies are working it up too much. It wasn't as bad as it seemed, I'm guessing. I would assume.
But you're saying the Holocaust happened.
They called it that, yeah.
All right. We can leave that one undecided. You changed the Shrek expression? Is this going to be like some sort of visual novel where the image slightly changes every now and then to show different expressions? All right. But I think we have 100. I think you got 100%. You got 100% accuracy on the are these events real quiz if we include your remembering of the Spanish-American War after we talked about it.
No, wait, no, I got that right.
Yeah, so if we count that, if at first you said that didn't happen, then I mentioned that we got the Philippines, then you said, oh yeah, I remember.
Oh,
so
you said the Mexican-American War.
We did not get the Philippines in the Mexican-American War. But you got the Mexican-American War right.
Yeah.
All right, this little bit at the beginning has become too confusing for its own good. Let's move on. So, do I want to start with taking any questions you have, or should I just start at the beginning of my notes as far as Japanese internment goes?
Let's start at the beginning of the notes, just because where to start is gonna be kind of weird for me.
All right. Also, just out of curiosity, how did you first learn about Manzanar? For that prompted you to ask me about it.
Oh, let me look it up. Hang on. Give me 1 second. What was it called? I think it's called Kenji. Hang on. You actually might like it if you don't know about this song. Yeah, here it is. I'm gonna post it to me. Send it to you real quick. But yeah, they mentioned it to this song where it's actually it's a rapper singing about the Japanese internment camps at the time.
Oh yeah, I know Kenji.
Yeah. But I found this song and I heard it years ago, but I never made the connection. And then I was listening to yesterday, day before last, when I messaged you, and went, oh, I now get the actual meaning to this.
Okay, all right then. So let's start with the beginning of the. I was actually thinking about Manzanar lately because I made a Radix Reflects video about Man the High Castle, and I talked about why I like that show. And I forgot to mention Manzanar and how that show dealt with, the difference between mainland Japanese and Japanese Americans in this proposed alternate history scenario. But then I remember I never mentioned that in my actual video. So I've been thinking, oh man, I didn't mention Manzanar, and then here you come at me with a DM about the historical Manzanar.
Is that why you're like, wait? You had that reaction in your text, like, what the fuck?
Oh no, that reaction was just because.
Really shocked by.
That was.
Yeah, you cut out for a second.
That was shock by you not knowing it.
Oh, okay, I see how it is.
So let me start with my notes. They're very poorly written notes, so I'm gonna have to turn this into some sort of conversational thing. But I guess we start with Japanese experience in America before World War II. Now, most Japanese coming to America. Oh, some vocabulary here. Issei, Nisei, and Sansei. Those are words that refer to generations. Ichi, ni, san is 1, 2, 3 in Japanese, and sei
means generation 1, isn't it?
Yes.
Yay! The song taught me something.
But Issei, in the context of Japanese Americans, refers to the immigrant generation, people from Japan who moved to America. Nisei refers to their children who were born in America, and Sansei are the children of the Nisei. For example, I am Sansei, my mom is Nisei, my grandmother would have been an Issei.
Oh, that's cool.
So, in the context of World War II, typically Nisei. What I just taught you was how they're actually used in the Japanese language, but in American textbooks they tend to take Japanese words and make them mean something very specific. Nisei is almost used interchangeably with Japanese American in American history textbooks for some reason. But let's see. But Issei, the first generation, the immigrants, technically it was illegal. Well, not illegal. It was immigrants from East Asia, including China and Japan, were not able to become United States citizens. They could immigrate, they could be legal aliens, with visas and stuff, but they couldn't become naturalized as citizens. From around 1913 to about 1925, different states across the United States were passing those sort of laws. An important thing to talk about here when we talk about here's the Japanese Americans and here are Japanese people who aren't American citizens, they still were permanent residents. They were still living. Well, a good bit of them were still permanent residents who were still living there. Most Japanese came from Japan to America because there was a lot of economic opportunity in America, particularly with the fishing industry. Japanese eventually, across the West Coast, had a strong hand in the fishing industry and in the agricultural industry. Let's see. Let me check my notes. There was one amendment to the law saying if you're a Japanese alien, you could become a citizen if you served in the United States Army during World War I. They opened that up in 1935, and then...
Sorry, pause quick.
Oh. Uh-huh. Oh, is that the pizza? Jar Jar Binks teaches Shrek about Japanese lineage. Yes. So how are you guys doing? Georgians are never going to change. Okay. Fitting music. Yeah, I wanted to set the mood with some 1940s-esque sort of jazz, boogie type stuff. Just sort of, get that feel of you're sitting at home smoking your pipe. You've got the radio on listening to Franklin Roosevelt's fireside chats. And you're not Japanese.
I'm back.
Hello, hello. You got your pizza there, my
calling.
dude?
No, they were calling saying that they're out of Dr. Pepper, so I had to brave asking the wife if that's okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And then you immediately start spitting fire in the chat.
I had it already typed. I had to put like the PIX at the very end and just send it.
Alright, so again, if you were Japanese and served during World War I, you could have gotten citizenship. You were eligible to it. So some Issei became citizens through fighting in World War I, which I never really realized there were many Japanese Americans who fought in World War I. I did some research. Apparently there were a total of 2 Japanese who fought in the American Civil War. So that was surprising, especially considering that the Civil War happened like 5 years after Japan was opened up to the public and people could leave Japan. And they were recruited out of Brooklyn, like not on the West Coast, but freaking Brooklyn. But let's see. 1940 was when the Alien Registration Act was passed. This required all immigrants, or aliens really, to register with the United States government. You get fingerprinted. Your name is on a registry. They know where you live. So knowing where the Japanese people lived is going to be important later on in this story for obvious reasons. When you plan on doing an Easter egg hunt, it's really helpful if you have a cheat list as to where all the Easter eggs are.
No, I just use real eggs, and then they don't find it by next week. It's their problem.
All right.
I hide shit above the ceiling tiles.
Okay. That sounds like the machinations of a madman. You're using Easter egg hunts as a platform to practice your skills at hiding weapons.
Hey! It's a good learning lesson because if they can't find them. They'll find them eventually with the smells.
All right.
Unless the shell hides it for 3 years and they change a tile and it falls to the floor, breaking into this black ooze. Definitely not working from personal experience here.
All right. Let's move on from that. So
yeah.
By the 1940s, America and Japan aren't getting along. Japan's placing the United States placing embargoes on Japan. Japan is saying that, the United States is just a meanie. And so on. So the governor of Hawaii, I believe it is, goes up to Roosevelt, and we're still not even in internment yet. We're just sort of giving you the idea of the landscape of how it felt to be Japanese and how the government thought of Japanese Americans. The governor of Hawaii, a state that has a significant population of Japanese people, goes up to President Roosevelt and says, "Hey, I got this plan. We hold 10,000 Japanese people hostage from Hawaii to try to influence Japan into backing down on any military expansion in East Asia." Roosevelt looks at me and says, "Okay, except you literally just said, let's take 10,000 of my people and hold them hostage. So, no." But that was a plan on the table.
Yeah, about okay. Can we not talk about just interning U.S. citizens? I mean, that was an option on the table. That's kind of freaky, just in my opinion, as it is.
Oh, we gotta hold 10,000 people on Hawaii hostage, but that plan never saw fruition. So things are getting bad between Japan and America. The Americans are untrusting of the Japanese. They believe, that the Japanese are going to turn against the United States if war breaks out. And then December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy, Pearl Harbor happens. And a lot of things happen on Pearl Harbor related to Japanese people, if you can believe it or not. First, the moment Pearl Harbor happens, it's like how 9/11, like how all the airports started freaking out once 9/11 happened. In the airports, like say you're a Japanese businessman who gets on a plane and flies across to freaking California to go visit his business. You don't know that Pearl Harbor's happening while you're in the air. Then you come into the California, you walk off that plane. I like to think of it as that scene in SpongeBob where that fish walks into the Krusty Krab and is like, rev up those fryers, and then gets beat up. Get off the plane, proto-TSA, whatever they had in the 1940s, pins you down, gun to your head.
Proto-TSA.
The freaking proto-TSA. So,
that's the best term I've heard all day, I think.
the proto-TSA.
Proto-TSA. Oh, jeez. That's wonderful.
Ethnically Japanese, or Japanese nationals are, detained at airports. Immediately, the FBI already had a list of Japanese people that was on their watch list at this point in time. Notably, these were community leaders and religious leaders, and not just like Shinto religious leaders, but like Christian religious leaders who were Japanese. And the moment Pearl Harbor happens, the FBI goes to them, just takes them from their families. In fact, most of them don't get to even inform their families that they got captured by the FBI. And they send them to these special facilities in New Mexico, Montana, and North Dakota. Most of them will end up staying at those places till the end of the war, without ever getting a chance to contact their families.
Don't tell anybody. We're just gonna come on. You know this is coming when it happened. Come on.
I have the number of how many they captured. I just can't find it. 1,291 was part of the initial December 7th arrest.
You say captured, but this might. I don't know. This is an insult I'm about to say. I don't see the Japanese putting up much of a fight. Y'all are very polite. Japanese people are very polite.
Yeah, it takes a lot. Assuming it's not freaking World War II and you're on the mainland. Assuming you're not your average Japanese soldier in World War II. Japanese people tend to, chill. In fact, there's a phrase when it comes to, so in Japanese we have this sort of phrase, I won't say proverb because it's just a normal phrase, but shikata ga nai or shou ga nai. And that sort of means, well, it can't be helped. Whenever something bad happens to us, we don't go, oh crap, we go, okay. We go, shou ga nai na, sore. So, the phrase shikata ga nai...
I've actually heard that phrase a couple times in anime. So
yeah. The phrase shikata ga nai ends up becoming used a lot by Issei people during the internment camps, that the Nisei, their children, who might not even speak Japanese, end up catching on to shikata ga nai, and they use shikata ga nai as sort of a mantra of, endurance. So the Japanese personality of just, whatever, I guess this is happening to me now.
Yeah, fucking fine, alright.
Is a major thing at play here during internment. Airports. The FBI also searched the homes of the 1,291 people they captured and just sort of took whatever they wanted. Now this
is a nice walk. I want this walk.
I guess
this is now my walk.
So, the major fear again was that Japanese people would betray the United States. And there is one incident that happens during Pearl Harbor that a U.S. general... Is he a general? Let me check my notes. Yes, a U.S. general will later use... He'll use this one incident as an excuse for the entire operation. During Pearl Harbor, there's a Japanese plane, a Japanese pilot that gets shot down, and he crashes near the island of Niahu, which is the smallest populated island in Hawaii. American forces find him crashed, they pull him out, and they capture him. As they're walking by with the two... one pilot, there's one pilot. As they're walking to take the captured pilot away, the Niahu citizens are watching, and then two ethnically Japanese Hawaiians come out of the crowd, pushing their fellow Niahuans aside, and then assault the U.S. forces and help break the Japanese pilot free. that one incident is used as, see, they're going to do something. They're going to betray us. So that's called the Yahoo incident.
You know those the family that came from, the family that, did that? Their family probably goes one or two ways with that. It's like, yeah, they helped the Japanese, or, shit, dude, you should have stayed back for a little bit.
Yeah.
Just like, it would have been fine. Just let it be for a minute, man. You have a mantra and everything. They're like, no, we got American. I don't know why I did that fucking voice. I'm bad with accents right now. But it's like, we're Americans now. We're ballsy as shit. Fuck you, American pig, and just slaps the shit out of them and says, you're ours, Japanese man. And they're like, what the fuck?
Okay, so
That's how Twisted Brain works.
So Pearl Harbor comes and goes, war is declared, and nothing happens. The Japanese people aren't doing anything that anyone can notice. And even as of today, haven't found any evidence of any sabotaging, any betrayals, or so on. And the Americans are sort of suspicious that nothing has happened so far, and this man called Lieutenant General John DeWitt goes, the fact that they're not doing anything means they're...
I've heard that name.
John DeWitt?
I've heard that name.
Okay. Where did you hear it?
That's another thing, is like, that name actually rang a bell. I'll keep thinking, see if I remember where that came from, but continue, sorry.
So Lieutenant General John DeWitt says, alright, see how the Japanese people are doing nothing right now? That's a sign that they're up to something, and they're up to something big.
those crafty Japanese.
Those Japanese doing nothing, which obviously means they're doing something. He actually uses a report about how someplace, I can't remember where, the power went out, and he used that as a sign that the Japanese cut off the power. The Japanese Americans cut off the power to sort of sabotage the West Coast. And he's saying, them being on the West Coast is a liability. It later comes to be found that a stray cow ended up somehow taking down power lines and taking out the power of the area. But nevertheless, that report is still used to justify some rights being taken away and plans for internment. As for a list of what rights were taken away, see, that's my Japanese side replacing the R's and L's.
Rights.
Oh, the lights. Japanese language schools get banned. You're not allowed to teach Japanese, which, by the way, around this time, if memory serves correctly, the amount of people in the United States that spoke Japanese that were not ethnically Japanese came to the number of 10. So, okay. Not a lot of Japanese being spoken here by non-Japanese. Cattle... So, John DeWitt makes a plan for creating zones to arrest Japanese people, people of Japanese descent, people of German descent, and people of Italian descent.
Oh, because of Stalin and all that bullshit?
Well, Stalin's Russian and was an ally.
Wait, who's the Italian dude then?
Benito Mussolini.
Yeah, that's it, Mussolini. Yeah, mustache guy.
Yeah. So, America's at war with Germany, Japan, and Italy. They're like, we have to round up the Japanese, Germans, and Italians. Here's the problem with that. People of German descent make up 17% of the American population, 26% of the white population. Every 10 white people about 10, maybe around 2 to 3 are gone. They're off to the camps. That's gonna mess up the country. Also, 6% of the American population is Italian. You really can't imprison like a quarter of your country.
I mean, you can, but
it's just not, especially when you're having a manpower shortage for soldiers, and you're gonna have to give women equal rights in working places.
Shit! Oh fuck! What you're saying? Well, hold on. That was the domino effect. What you're saying is, women got rights, a lot more rights, because we had Japanese internment camps.
They had a lot more freedom in the workplace. They had a lot more opportunities in the workplace. It led to them leaving fields that they were traditionally associated with, like teaching and medical stuff, and into things like engineering, more construction work, etc. And it ultimately did there was a feminist movement before that, but the manpower shortage because of the draft and because of World War II led to a lot of more development, I guess, in the feminist field.
Damn.
So, the decision was made that we can't arrest all the Germans and all the Italians. But the Japanese, we can take them all out. We'll get to what Japanese how they decided to arrest Japanese people. Here's how they decided to arrest Germans and Italians. They decided instead of just taking anyone with German or Italian descent, we're going to only consider people who are either German immigrants themselves from Germany or have at least one parent who is German. They might have two parents that are German, but if they could be immigrant German, son and daughter of immigrant Germans, or sons and daughters of one immigrant German and an American or what else. And then after the same rule applied to the Italians. Once the Italians and Germans were put into their camps, there was then an individual sort of interview process where they went through each one on a one-by-one individual basis and decided which ones were considered a threat and which ones were not. And basically, to be considered a threat, you had to be, having a swastika on your shoulder and all of that. But if you were just a normal person, like, you go free. Japanese don't get the individual case-by-case treatment. But, the plan is to arrest Japanese, and they're sort of just experimenting with this. 15,000 Japanese Americans at first willingly decide to move inland to different states. And at first it's not in camps, it's just to inland towns. They decide to do this because they want to prove their loyalty to the United States, and they consider that, yes, we're a small percentage of the population. If anyone's going to have to adapt, it's going to be us. We'll move, we'll pick up, we'll move for the sake of the country, etc. So 15,000 are the first people to move. The thing is, the states inland, like Arkansas, even not as far as Texas, states like those, they're having a problem with all of a sudden this influx of Japanese people into their states. And ultimately, 10 different governors from 10 different states protest to the national government and say that if the states are going to be forced to take in these Japanese people from the West Coast, they need to be locked up and put into camps because they don't want them intermingling with the basic population of the states. So ultimately you have a lot of Midwest states upset at the national government because of this influx of Japanese. You still have a majority of the Japanese population not moving away from the West Coast. And so Franklin Roosevelt steps in and gives Executive Order 9066. He signs it on February 19th, 1942. Today, February 19th is sort of seen as the day of remembrance for Japanese Americans. It's sort of the day where we contemplate the cultural role of Japanese Americans in the United States, in the context of the United States. But it doesn't go into effect until May 15th, 1942. So it starts with a dude called Milton S. Eisenhower, who's from the Department of Agriculture. And he becomes the head of this thing called the War Relocation Authority, which is in charge of taking Japanese Americans and Japanese people and bringing them into camps. I lost my notes. However, Eisenhower sees this as a good idea, but it doesn't take long before he resigns. Like 3 months after he's put in charge of the War Relocation Authority, he resigns because he realizes that he's just incarcerating innocent Americans, and he's like, I didn't realize it was going to be like this. I thought there was going to be more of an investigative process. Apparently not, and so he sort of resigns.
Go figure.
But the War Location Authority continues and carries on. I have a lot of details on sort of how people were rounded up, who were rounded up, etc. They were called evacuations because it's always nice to have a nice little name to put on top of things like this. Those began March 24th. Japanese people had, because they were registered with the Registry of Immigrants, the FBI was able to go to these people's houses and give them this paper that had a notice. They also put the notices up in public spaces. Everyone knew about it. The notices go
get
up.
The hell out.
It gives them 6 days notice to pack everything they want to take with them, and they have to leave to their local. There are centers in each area. Everyone has their local center, and the center will take them to the camp. Everything you can't pack with you, that gets left behind. Your businesses, your homes, your fishes, because again, the Japanese were your fishes, your boats, because the Japanese had a large role in the fishing industry. Your boats were all had to stay there. They would not be maintained. After the Japanese were gone to the camps, a lot of the time you'd have the local population vandalize the houses or businesses or boats, etc. In fact, I think we can bring this up now if I can find it. Taking away a large Japanese population meant that there was labor shortages, especially in agriculture and fishing. So the United States was, where can we get cheap labor? How can we replace the vacancies left by these Japanese people? And so the United States turns to Mexico, and the Mexican and American governments agree on something called the Braquero Program, which essentially allows easy access for Mexicans to come into the west coast of the United States and to fill the vacancies left by Japanese Americans. So, quite literally, the Mexicans took their jobs.
Jesus. And the Mexicans went, you know what? We like this. We need to stay here forever. And then bring our children. And now we're here.
Let me delete the things I've already spoken so I don't lose what I... Oh, where is the... Did I just delete it? There were some rights taken away from the Japanese before the internment camps happened. Let me see if I can find it. And then we have Darth Convoy coming in here with whataboutisms.
Whataboutisms? Wait, what is he saying?
Just saying, the Japs had sex labor camps. They didn't have sex labor camps. And torture camps. They didn't have torture camps. They had torture. They did torture, but they didn't have camps devoted to torture. And straight up death camps, no. I believe they had the highest non-domestic kill count during World War II. I don't think that's true either.
Oh, look at me! I had the lowest kill count. I'm so perfect. Look at me.
I like how he comes in just casually using the word Jap. Do you think he knows I'm Japanese or?
Probably not.
Where is it? I have it somewhere. Let me do a Control F. There you go. These were things that Japanese Americans were banned from having. The FBI would come to your house and make sure and take these stuff away from you. This happens between Pearl Harbor and Executive Order 9066. There is a ban on possession of firearms, bans of possessing war materials, and banning shortwave radio. So the FBI would enter these people's homes, take away their weapons and radio. I'm not really sure what war materials is, but whatever.
Uranium.
Yes, your average Japanese American home with their uranium.
And you don't know.
I think I would know.
You don't know. Maybe they just had stockpiles of uranium. That's their version of MSG back in the day.
Suspicious Japanese schools, Germans, Italians, 10 governors, executive order, evacuations. Okay, so who were interned? It's easy to say Japanese Americans, but Issei were interned, which were Japanese who technically weren't Japanese Americans, technically not citizens. About 1/3 of the population of Japanese internment camps were Issei. The other 2/3, roughly, were Nisei and Sansei. Now, so the enemy is Japan. You would think maybe everyone that... So, Koreans. Issei Koreans, they don't call them Issei because that's a Japanese term, but Korea was under Japanese rule. Koreans were technically Japanese citizens. They were not interned. So
Okay.
you have Japanese citizens who are ethnically Korean who are not interned. Now, who else were in these camps? How much Japanese do you think it took? How much Japanese in your blood? How much Japanese do you think you need to be put into a camp? Let me hear your estimation, Twisted.
25%.
The recorded minimum amount of Japanese blood required to be interned, you needed to be at least at most. It's weird because we're talking about the smallest number. At most, this smallest number. 1/16 Japanese.
Damn, they were going off Indian numbers at that point.
Which means, if I were to have a child with a non-Japanese person, not only would that child be interned if we were in that affected area at that time, if my child had a child with another non-Japanese person, my grandchild would still be interned. Let's see. They weren't all just Japanese and Japanese Americans. Canada also had their own program where they interned 21,000 Japanese people. Meanwhile, Mexico, Peru, Brazil, Chile, and Argentina all took the people of Japanese descent in their countries and deported them up into the United States. The United States was willing to take them in. They took them in and put them in their camps.
Wow.
So in these
This is actually very interesting.
So in any one camp, you might have freaking Yamato Kawashima, this old-aged Japanese dude wearing a kimono who came from Kyoto, who only speaks Japanese. And you might have this Mexican dude who's 1/16 Japanese who only speaks Spanish in the same camp. So...
It made sure they couldn't communicate very well.
Yeah, language was an interesting barrier within it because you have Spanish, you have Portuguese, you have English, and you have Japanese. And a lot of people only spoke one language. If you were bilingual, most of the time, the extra language was Japanese for obvious reasons. But there was a lot of language barriers. Because, again, Issei were not considered American citizens. Most Japanese Issei were coming to America for economic opportunity but intended to come back. So they saw their time in America as a business thing, but then they intended to go back. They're working overseas. So they didn't really bother to learn English. Their children who were born in America did know English, and you sort of have the situation you see with Mexican families where you have children having to be translators for their parents. But unlike the Mexican situation, the Japanese weren't intending to stay here long term. 17,000 of the people interned were children under the age of 10. There were several thousand elderly and handicapped people. They were to report to their local relocation center where they could have they might be stayed at the relocation center for a few months before they actually get sent to a camp. Are those kind of like first, second, and third Issei, Nisei, and Sansei? Yeah, those are generations. Most Japanese in the early waves, they would be put on a train and sent to the camp.
In the early waves?
In the early waves. They'd be sent on trains and then, chugga choo-chooed over to the camp. Most of them were shocked when they saw the barbed wire because they did not think they were being sent to a camp. They thought they were being sent to a town. But again, the Midwestern states didn't want... Not even just Midwestern states, West Coast states, just deeper in the interior of the West Coast, didn't want these people mingling with their populations. Where is it? The 101 orphans. Here it is. There was an orphanage that had 101 children of Japanese descent. The orphans were rounded up and taken to the camps.
Jesus Christ, no!
101 Dalmatians were like 101 Japanese orphans.
Oh my.
So let's talk about Hawaii, because again, a huge percentage of the population of Hawaii were Japanese. The governor of Hawaii at this time realized, we can't just arrest the entirety of the Japanese population of Hawaii, because a lot of businesses stepped in when it came to Hawaii and said, if you imprison all the Japanese people of Hawaii, the economy of Hawaii is going to go to crap immediately. Hawaii will not be able to self-sustain itself. You're taking a huge population chunk out. So eventually only 1,500 Hawaiians of Japanese descent were arrested, and they were deemed more of a threat than the basic population. Most Japanese people were fine on Hawaii. Oh, except for the curfew, by the way. There's some, if you didn't get sent to a camp, let's say you're in the East Coast, and we'll talk more in detail with the East Coast, but there were some areas in the West Coast where you could, I think this applied to all Japanese in the country, not just the West Coast. There were several, like the gun, you couldn't have guns or radio, that was one of them, but you also had a curfew where you couldn't go beyond, how many miles? You couldn't travel more than 20 miles away from your home, with the exception of going to a government office. Let's see. A few people in the West Coast actually immediately tried to send their children to college on the East Coast to avoid them being sent to the camps. Not many got accepted into the colleges. As for the other people on the East, like people naturally on the East Coast, there were so little on the East Coast that they're hardly ever spoken of. I only know two anecdotal stories about, because there weren't enough Japanese people on the East Coast for the government to bother to make a law. In one case, I think someone up in Wisconsin or Michigan, they were just deported to Washington, and then they had to follow the laws of being on the East Coast. Like, you thought you got out of the affected zone, now we'll just deport you over to Washington, and then now you have to follow the rules there. There was another one, I think, somewhere in Virginia? I can't remember. But essentially the local authorities like just put them under house arrest. But the thing is, you have one Japanese person under house arrest. The local government forgot about that, and they would eventually end up starving to death in their own home because they couldn't get food. They couldn't go shopping for food. They relied on imports of food from the outside, from the government, to keep them alive, and then they sort of forgot about them.
Oh wow, that's Jesus fucking Christ. This is the largest shit show I think I've ever heard of. At least the Germans had a fucking plan.
Oh yeah, by the way, 1/16 Japanese were sent to the camps. To put that into context, if you were 1/4 Jewish in Germany, you were considered a citizen. You were encouraged to have children with white people so you could breed out the Jewish side of you, but you weren't really put under specific race laws. So even 1/4 Jewish people had it better in Germany than 1/16 Japanese people in Japan. In America. Couldn't intern all Hawaiians, destroy the Hawaiian economy. There was one camp where they said, we'll have this camp called Tule Lake in California. We're just interning people left and right. We don't care. But for those Japanese people we think actually might be a threat, we send them to Tule Lake. Except Tule Lake very quickly became a normal internment camp because more people just kept entering it. They didn't really do proper background checks. Tule Lake is the one they said was where the most dissidents were, and it probably did have the most dissidents, but it still wasn't an overwhelming majority of dissidents. George Takei was imprisoned at Tule Lake.
Wait, George Takei was?
Yes, the Star Trek actor.
Wow. See, that's actually kind of interesting because that seems like a different era to me completely.
Mm.
Like, we're at this point in like my life or our generation's life, we're so far removed from that almost, or at least most of people I know are. You know.
Yeah, we'll get to where my grandmother fits into this eventually. So here's another thing. These camps, by the way, were put in the freaking desert, land that nobody wanted. Because, why would you put these people on land that could be actually fertile land that could be used, especially when we're just recovering with the Great Depression. So these camps were put in the middle of nowhere in the desert. The Dust Bowl still hasn't entirely died yet, so every now and then you'd get huge dust storms in these camps. And another thing, the U.S. government tends to like, at least then, has an affinity to putting people they don't want in places in the middle of nowhere with terrible land, which meant that most of these camps were put in the middle of Indian reservations. So the Native Americans, so we just gotta be stomping on everyone with this. The Native Americans were really pissed off that the government was going into reservations and just setting up these camps. And they're like, you're putting a lot of Japanese people in Indian territory. You realize that. They would protest, but the governors and federal government would always overrule their protestations.
The reservations are just like, yeah, we'll let you rule this land, but it's still ours.
Yeah. So if we want to send over 100,000 Japanese people into them, let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, that's America's prerogative in a sense,
Let's see, who else were involved? A lot of people volunteer to go to the camps, besides the 15,000 I mentioned in the earliest wave. But they volunteered because they had a policy of separating families. If they figured that a family was too dangerous, and by the way, there wasn't any real proper vetting process, there was no investigation done. It's like, they're Japanese, dangerous, split up the families. So a lot of people volunteered.
1 second, Primus, sorry.
All right, you got it. Little known fact, I have killed 8,059 humans, says Dreadcore.
We're gonna keep that. Please, give me a couple slices, woman. Pizza finally got here.
Nothing like a good old pizza.
To warm the belly after talking about enslavement.
Okay.
Life is good. No, I'm kidding. I'm fucking around. No, this is bad. I'm not gonna say it's Holocaust bad, but it's on up there. I guess it's fair. I guess I can see America's Yeah, it's bad, but at least we're not burning them, putting them in gas chambers.
That's okay. There is a semantic argument when it comes to talking about the camps. A lot of people say you shouldn't call them concentration camps because that makes people think of, the Holocaust. If you look at the terms, concentration just means a lot of people in one place. These are concentration camps. Internment camp is used to sort of separate from the Holocaust. I, for one, like to use concentration camps not only because it's the correct term, but also I don't like the Jews monopolizing the term and saying only we can have our things being called concentration camps.
The fucking, you're like, yeah, Jews, fuck you, man. We did things too.
All right, are y'all settled with your pizza?
She's getting it.
Nah, gotcha.
So yeah, we can keep going. We're just
Okay. So again, talking about families volunteering to go to camp so they can stay with their families. People, if you were a white person or a Jewish person who married a Japanese person and your family got taken to the camp, you could volunteer to go to these camps. So in these camps, not only do we have people of all different mixed Japanese, you also have straight up white Americans, Jewish Americans, etc. that are in there just because they don't want to be separated from their loved ones.
wow. Yeah, we're just gonna come hang out essentially.
Now we can add
What's up,
one
my
more.
dudes?
We can add one more demographic to these camps. As the war keeps going on, Japanese people get captured because that's how war works. Eventually, they're going to capture some of the enemies. POW camps in the United States, particularly in the Midwest and even sort of further east, like Louisiana, they served as prisoner of war camps. Prisoners of the Imperial Japanese Navy and Imperial Japanese Army were put in the same camp as these guys. So, again, you might have freaking Stacy LePew, this white girl who's the wife of, this 1/16th Japanese dude in the same camp as freaking Hideo Kawashima, a lieutenant in the Imperial Japanese Army who beheaded 3 Chinese people. It's a very eclectic mix in these camps.
Jesus Christ, my dude.
Let's see. Ralph Lawrence Carr, the governor of Colorado, he was the only elected public official to publicly denounce the internment of American citizens. Because of that, he lost his re-election, and however, he's very much a cherished figure in the Japanese American community. In Denver, I believe, there's a statue of his honor in the Japantown over there. So we really like Ralph Lawrence Carr, but at that time, nobody else did.
Pretty cool.
Hey, that's pretty good. Immigration services. If you are stupid enough to try to immigrate into America, if you were Japanese during this time, you would go to the immigration service office and then get detained and then sent to a camp.
I wonder how long it took him to figure that one out.
Yeah, I don't know. That's worth noting, but I think that's a very small portion of people who were interned. Okay, and then we can get to the propaganda. Because a majority of people supported the camps, but there was a small portion of people who didn't. However, the population's outlook on the camps were swayed. During this time, if you were to go to a movie theater, during World War II, what would happen is the propaganda office, I forget the official title of it, would play a propaganda film before every movie. Sometimes it would be like a status on the front. Like, hey, we just took Normandy and D-Day or whatever. Sometimes it would be like, buy war bonds, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of the war bond ones.
Yeah. Captain America, the First Avenger, that movie, you see Captain America, before he's Captain America, sitting in the theater and he sees a propaganda movie and you have that dude complaining like, just start the film already. It was sort of like that. There was about 2 propaganda films about Japanese internment. Basically, it says that most of these Japanese people volunteered because they want to do what's right for their country. And then there's a lot of fertile land in these camps, so they've been growing things like rubber plants to support the war effort. They get access to quality education. There are even jobs, and they can even do some self-governance. One propaganda film suggested that not only were these camps self-governing, but they also held, diplomacy with their guards, so that, the United States was conducting trade with the internment camps. Most of this isn't true, or not what they seemed. because, well, we'll get into the quality of education and jobs up in a moment. I think rubber plants were grown, and there was a lot of labor done to make camouflage mesh for the army during the war. I'm not sure if that was forced labor. It could be. It very much could have been.
It could very easily be forced labor.
But I believe they were paid, but we'll get to the payment. We can go to the payment now. It was decided that if you were to work in the camps, the amount of payment you get, it couldn't exceed the amount a private in the army got paid. So you had doctors.
So very little.
Teachers, yes, very little. Doctors, like these real high-up professions, being paid the same salary as a private. Which kind of you can infer the quality of medical care and education there. Propaganda, military
pretty
bases.
damn good. 'Cause, I mean, again, I have a lot of good things to say about the Japanese people. Y'all are, I say y'all, but it's more or less even if I'm not getting paid, it's still my profession.
Oh yeah.
Kind of mentality.
Shikata nai ne. Military bases include civilians as well as Japanese prisoners of war. These were in remote areas. A lot of these camps were put on old abandoned fairgrounds and racetracks. A lot of the buildings were not meant for human habitation. They would sleep in what were horse stalls and cow sheds that they had to work on converting. There was a lot of food shortages and substandard sanitation. Communal eating areas, although I can see Americans seeing why communal eating areas are a bad thing. They were all forced to eat in this one room.
But that's kind of
that's how Japanese typically.
Tradition.
Yeah, it's communal. Besides the sanitation issues and not being in places for human habitation, that's the big thing. I think we can deal with communal eating areas. That's the typical.
Yeah,
style
that's why everybody
eating.
talk. That's the time that everybody talk shit about the guards.
Maybe. Let's see.
Did you see Captain Rodriguez today? What a fucking asshole.
Some could work. Couldn't be paid more than private. Make camouflage nets. Oh, okay. So there's a labor shortage because most American men are out fighting. The camps had this program with the federal government that they allowed around 1,000 people who were interned, which isn't much considering the whole population of interned people was 100,000. But 1,000 people were allowed to leave the camps temporarily to serve for farm work in other states, but then they had to go back.
Go figure.
Around 4,000 were allowed to leave for college, except I'm not sure about that because I got that from a source that as I looked into it, more and more was revealed to be incorrect. So I'm not sure about the 4,000. Especially what I know is that a lot of people before the camp started up tried to send their children over to college on the East Coast, and many of them failed to do so. So I'm not sure. 4,000 seems like a big number for that.
Big number compared to though for as much as it was though.
Yeah. So they were not allowed to speak Japanese in the camps. Now that only worked in so much as if someone caught you speaking Japanese, there was punishment.
So a lot of people just didn't speak. Went around Americans.
Yeah. If you're the type of person that only spoke Japanese, sucks for you. But as long as the guards weren't in earshot, as long as no one caught you speaking Japanese, you could speak Japanese. Japanese was spoken. These camps, even though they were of poor quality, they did deteriorate over time because there wasn't proper maintenance of them. Death storms, already mentioned the death storms. Alright, now we can get into when it got so bad that people rioted and people were shot. So, we got a couple incidents here. So.
Just a couple?
A handful. One of them is interesting because it's Japanese on Japanese murder.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But the first one, and chronologically the first one, I believe, happens in Lordsburg, New Mexico. This is very early in the internment process. People still haven't got... The Japanese on the train still haven't realized that they're going to a camp yet. They're on the trains, they get delivered to it by train, then they have to march 2 miles at night over to reach their camp. An elderly man, who I believe had some sort of mental illness, so he wasn't in his right mind. An elderly man just is screw this, I'm autistic, and then runs away. So as he's running away, he gets shot and killed by the guards. the people on the train eventually settle in, and of course, the first night before they even reach the camp, a dude's already shot dead. So they're not feeling very, happy about this. 2 men eventually try to escape because they think we're all going to get killed over here, man. So they try to escape, and then they get shot and killed. August 4th, 1942, at the camp at Santa Anita, there's not enough rations and overcrowding. People are cramped together. There's not enough food to go around. Eventually, the Japanese, who have the philosophy of shikataganai, mind you, who are used to suffering, they reach their breaking point and start a riot. I think this leads to tear gas being thrown in and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, makes sense.
Now we go to Manzanar. Now, Manzanar is
where this actual conversation started.
Manzanar is sort of late into the internment phase, and it's going to touch up on things I'm going to bring up later. But basically, the Japanese people, they've been interned for a long time at this point, and they've become sort of, they don't really like the United States much at this point. And here's the thing, a lot of people were okay with the United States, but when you're interned for 3 years, you start to I don't like this country, actually. Maybe Japan has a point. But there's this organization called the Japanese American Citizen League, where they want to make Japanese Americans viewed as equals in American society, and they really want to focus on, the American part of American society. The Japanese American Citizen League will eventually go on to do a lot of great things, such as helping take down laws that prevented interracial marriage, which meant that because their actions, I get to exist here today. But nowadays, they mostly just care about the gays. So their mission has sort of gone off track since now that it's 2018. But there is one dude in the camp who's a member of the Japanese American Citizen League who wants to make Japanese Americans equal, wants to end internment, and he's allowed to go out for a Japanese American Citizen League meeting over in the big city. I don't know where Manzanar is near. It's California, middle of nowhere. But he gets to go meet with the JACL in the city, and then he comes back. A lot of people don't like him because they don't like the Japanese... A lot of people in the camps don't like him because they don't like the Japanese American Citizen League because, again, it's very pro-American.
Yeah.
The dude who's part of the league votes on something that ultimately says we should be equals. Also, that means we probably should be eligible for the draft. Which, would make sense. If we're equal, we should be for the draft. But the people who've been interned for 3 years, why would I want to be part of the draft? They don't treat us as equals anyway. Why would you sign us up to be in this draft and fight and be forced to fight and die for a country? At this point, we're not very pro gung ho about anymore. So
it's just east of Mount Whitney. Manzanar.
I don't know where Mount Whitney is.
All right, let me see if I find a.
I don't really know the geography.
It's west of Fresno, or east of Fresno. It's between Fresno and Las Vegas, just almost right in the dead center of those two.
So desert.
Actually, it's nestled right up in between the Rocky Mountains.
Ah. So the dude part of the JACL comes back to the camps. He goes to his little sleeping area, which, by the way, there's no proper rooms for sleeping. It's more barrack style. He goes into his little barrack, tries to sleep. 6 members of the camp wearing masks start to beat him, and because he tried to get this legislation passed that would make them eligible for the draft. The police the guards step in because there's people beating each other to death. The masked men disperse. The dude who's part of the league is bloodied up. Eventually they blame this one Japanese dude. I'm not sure if they had much evidence, but they blame this one Japanese dude for instigating the attack on the league dude, and they imprison him. Everyone else in the camp says, you can't just imprison that dude, and they begin to riot. And so eventually the guards, where is it? They throw tear gas in and then kill one dude. So that was the Manzanar riot.
I think Ferguson had more deaths than that.
Yeah, probably. The Topaz Relocation Center incident. A dude walks too close to the perimeter. Not outside of the perimeter, mind you. He walks too close to the perimeter. Gets shot and killed. 2 months later, a couple goes up to the perimeter, gets shot. I don't think they get killed, but people are being shot at.
Guys, aim for the leg next time, okay?
1943 at Tule Lake, a riot breaks out. Tear gas gets launched. Martial law is declared in the camp until eventually things settle down. I probably should talk about the conditions in the camp before I get to people getting shot and killed.
Yeah.
On average, places where around 25 people were meant to live. Places where enough space for 4 people were meant to live was made for 25 people. So 25 people crammed into space meant for 4 people. Toilets were unpartitioned, meaning think of, a public restroom, except get rid of the stalls. So you're all just sort of sitting looking each other in the eyes as you use the bathroom.
Now, correct me real quick. I know at this time, Japan was a lot more modernized than back 50, 60 years prior to that. Is it India or Japan that had basically just the communal squatting toilets?
At this time, India. I think
Okay.
Japan had gotten rid of that by now. However, they did have they still have squatting toilets today. There's this gap between modern Japanese toilets. You either have squatting toilets or you have a toilet with so many buttons you hardly know what to do with them. There's barely anything in between. But both of them are fairly common, both types of toilets. But none communal.
I asked that because I was talking to one of my guys I just met. When in Japan, he was in an older part of Tokyo. I had old hotels, and they said they just have like a communal bathroom, communal bath area.
Right.
And there's like a row of like 6 holes in the floor.
Well, communal bath areas are normal.
No, he said that was a toilet. Like it's just like they apparently he explained it as a really shitty hotel.
Well, there are some crappy hotels, but
It was like what he described was like one of those pod hotels, but with a communal shower and shit area.
all right. Education. There was no budget for the schools. There was not enough materials for students. When temperatures rise, schoolhouses would become unbearably hot. There were huge class sizes of about 50 people. Curriculum, there was no planned curriculum, so what they ended up teaching was studying the democratic ideas and American ideas in baseball. And this is how baseball gets really popular among the Japanese American community.
I figured they'd hate it after it was all said and done.
Well, these are like just little kids who don't know what's going on. Let's see. No budget, blah, 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 American values. So at this point in time, it's sort of in a legal gray zone if it's constitutional to take an entire population of people and put them into camps. So around this time, this dude named Fred Korematsu is suing the United States government. There's a court case, Korematsu versus the United States. And ultimately, in 1944, the Supreme Court rules that, yeah, this is constitutional. So, yeah, we can do this. So
yeah, this is cool.
So at that point, things get even worse in the camps. But really, an interesting thing to note is Japan's reaction, because Japan is noticing that America is imprisoning all these Japanese people. And Japan had, ever since the Racial Equality Act was vetoed by the United States and the Western powers at the Versailles Treaty at the end of World War I.
League of Villains!
Japan has kind of been like, the Western countries are racist and barbaric, and there's no point in trying to deal with them as equals because they don't see us as equals. The treatment of Japanese Americans in America only solidified that idea in Japan's mind and continue to sort of contribute to why a lot of Japanese actions were sort of very almost dehumanizing towards Americans during the war, because they felt they don't see us as equals, why should we deal with them as equals? But
Right, so real quick,
yes,
like you asked about Manzanar or whatever.
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna actually send you a picture real quick. First of all, I was like, oh yeah, this actually doesn't look that bad. This is actually a worse place to be than just in the middle of the fucking desert. It sits between two peaks in the Rocky Mountains, meaning there's very little like breeze in this valley.
Oh yeah.
Also, let me go and take a little snippet for you. In case you want to, I don't know, show it on stream or you just for your personal kind of hoo-ha. Because I'm doing side research like why you're teaching me and stuff. It's kind of interesting. Look at this. Here's the layout of Manzanar. The walls, of course, are gone, but that is the visitor center, and then there's like you can see where the barracks and stuff were. The barracks and rows and stuff.
Yeah, these camps were typically built out in the middle of nowhere, aka Native American reservations, and a lot of stuff had to be built from scrap. By the Japanese in the camps, by the way. A lot of stuff wasn't provided by the government beforehand.
Jesus Christ.
Okay,
it's
now
really odd. There's only one way you can like sit on here. It's like the camera's only gone down one side of this fucking interstate.
Oh yeah. So now we get to talk about what happened to territory America took from Japan during World War II. You know, your Iwo Jima, your Midway Island, islands that Japan, well, not Midway, but Iwo Jima, Saipan, stuff like that. Places that Japan had Japanese people on the islands that America took from Japan.
No, that's the that was a mistype, but that's what the area looked like. It's really pretty, I'll give it that, but it's gotta be a bitch with the heat.
Oh yeah.
Cause you look, to the that's to the west, to the east. There's no snow on the top of that mountain. On the east side, the west side, just snow up there. So, you know, the valley's gonna be fucking weird. I don't know how the airflows work here at all. Either really fucking cold or really fucking hot. Cause one way the air's coming from the desert, the other way it's coming off the freezing cold mountaintops.
Most reports say really, really hot.
Jeez.
So, America takes land from Japan, takes, Saipan, takes Iwo Jima, takes islands where Japanese people are living, but who are Japanese citizens and not even Japanese Americans. The same policy over in America applies to them, although more often than not, some, like the barracks, are available to Japanese Americans in America. On Saipan and stuff like that, you got to rebuild the stuff from scratch, and the Japanese citizens were made to do that. And prisoners of war, like soldiers, were also held with the civilians. My grandmother was held in one of those camps. So let's see. She actually was a rice cooker.
What? Okay.
She made rice balls for the communal eating area.
That's kind of neat, actually.
She was actually making rice balls the moment she learned that the war was over. And as she described it,
I'll finish these rice balls.
As she described it, everyone was happy, and she was crying out of joy, but mostly because she wouldn't have to make rice balls anymore soon.
Has she not made it? Has she made any sense?
Yeah. She would have been 18 when the war ended.
Wow.
So, the war has been going on for a while. America has not only a manpower shortage for running the country, but also a soldier shortage. And we need capable men to fight in the army. Hey, don't we have a lot of camps with a bunch of capable men in just sort of not doing anything in there? So they go to the camps, they create this questionnaire called the loyalty questionnaire, where they give people this questionnaire to test their loyalty. These are questions like, what do you do in your free time? What sports do you know? What they're looking for is, are you playing baseball or are you practicing judo? They're looking for, which language do you speak the best, Japanese or English? They're looking to these things that, we need to take the most American people out of these camps and use them as soldiers. At the end, it was eventually just meant for Nisei, men who are of fighting age. But they decided, we're doing this, may as well poll the entire camp population. The last two questions are the main questions that they were looking at. Question 27, are you willing to serve in the armed forces of the United States on combat duty whenever ordered? And question 28, will you swear unqualified allegiances to the United States of America and faithfully defend the United States from any and all attack by foreign or domestic forces, and forswear any form of allegiance or obedience to the Japanese Emperor or other foreign government, power, or organization? If you said no to both of those questions, you were put on a list. You were called what the guards called a no-no, and collectively they were called no-nos. because they answered 2 no's in a row, but also, that's a no-no. That's a bad person. Now, 17% of the camp were no-nos. Of all the camps, 17% of the population were no-nos, which is interesting because anti-American sentiment was starting to grow in the camps, but even then, only 17% were saying this. But there were several reasons why people said no. And a majority of the men of the fighting age actually said yes and yes to both of those questions. Most of the reasons the people said no was they either saw, if they said yes, they thought that the government would interpret that as willingness to serve, and that would mean that they officially volunteered and they didn't want to go out fighting because, who wants to fight and die in a war? A lot of them were insulted because they hated the wording of some of the questions, specifically the last one, will you forswear any form of allegiance or obedience to the Japanese emperor? Because they saw that question, they saw the wording of that question to imply that they already had allegiance to the emperor, and they're like, no man, we're Americans, why would we even ask that? And then so they say no to spite them. A lot of people said no because they expected the United States government to deport them to Japan anyway. They felt that there was no way Japan could maintain these internment camps, and so they would eventually deport them to Japan. So if they said yes, I will forswear any allegiance to the emperor, and then you get deported to Japan and people know you said that on your questionnaire, that's not going to be good. You're not going to have a good time in Japan. Let's see. I thought I had more here about why people would say no. There's got to be something more here. Oh, they also ask, your religious stuff, if you were a Buddhist or a Christian. So, okay, let's talk about people who didn't like America in the camp. Specifically, there was a gang problem in Manzanar, where you have a group of Japanese Americans. They were mostly Nisei and Kibei. Kibei refers to people who were Japanese ethnicity, born in America, but when they were of the age to go to college, they went to Japan to go to college. And then after college, they came back to America. Those were Kibei. The Manzanar Black Dragons formed as the gang in Manzanar. Wow. They drove around in a trash truck that they had, taken over. Commandeered. A commandeered trash truck that they decorated with a black and white skull and crossbones flag like they were pirates. They would ride around
Pirates of Manzanar! Give me all your rice rolls!
The Manzanar Black Dragons would just ride around in Manzanar, sort of terrorizing the civilians, their fellow internees. They would distribute leaflets. I don't know how they managed to produce leaflets in the camp, but they urged...
wrote them. They literally just made them.
That's actually probably it, yeah. And they distributed these leaflets urging Nisei to discontinue work or aid for the U.S. military, like making camouflage meshes, doing jobs that accepted, their private salary. Just stop helping the American war effort. The Manzanar Black Dragons had their allegiance to Japan. They threatened physical violence against anyone who would not be loyal to Japan, and if they showed loyalty to the United States. There's actually this anecdote of this man with his Jewish wife. She's one of those non-Japanese people in the camps, but was just there because she was the wife of someone. They started beating up.
You said she was Jewish?
Yeah, she was Jewish.
She's like, oh, thank William, I'm here in America. I'm not gonna be in a internment camp. Ah, fuck!
Oh man. But
what is it? What's that music? Shit, what's it called? Like, oh fuck.
Oh yeah, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yes, Curb Your Enthusiasm starts playing.
So they get beat up by the Manzanar Black Dragons. The Manzanar Black Dragons was just another bad thing in the Manzanar camp. It was not a good day to live in Manzanar. It was not a good few years to live in Manzanar. So at this point, America's noticed that they've sort of polled people. They see that there are some people that are willing to fight and serve, but they also want to do a little social experiment to see how many people are willing to leave the United States and renounce their citizenship. So America passes a law. Of course Congress will pass a law for a social experiment, and not because it's a necessary law, but Congress passes a law that allows Nisei and Kibei to, if they want to, they can just renounce their American citizenship. They do that, and 6,000 Nisei and Kibei renounce their citizenship.
Because we're out.
And like, we're out. And then America's like, ha, it was just a prank. It was a social experiment. And then takes everyone who renounced their citizenship and sends them to Tool Lake, the camp that was meant for dissidents. So it's like, fooled you.
Jesus Christ.
You're going to the camp. However,
gotcha, bitch! Get on the bus!
Around 6,000 were renounced their citizenship. 5,000 were sent to Tool Lake. Around 1,000 were sent to Japan, but most of the ones that were sent to Japan were like already elderly, like Issei people who there was no point in having them in America anyway. But for like actual Japanese Americans, into the other camp with you, the worst camp. Now, because they renounced their citizenship, they were stuck in America in that camp, and after the camps would eventually end, most Japanese American people sort of looked down on them and sort of thought of them as traitors, so their whole lives are pretty much over after they renounced their citizenship. Although it's also noticed that most deportees... okay, I already said that. The people who were deported back to Japan actually didn't speak English and might not have even understood the question that was asked. Okay, we have a little quote from a dude named Minoru Kiyota, who renounced his citizenship and then later regretted it. He says, "My renunciation."
Go figure why you regretted it.
My renunciation had been an expression of momentary emotional defiance in reaction to years of persecution suffered by myself and other Japanese Americans, and in particular to the degrading interrogation by the FBI agents at Topaz and being terrorized by the guards and gangs at Tool Lake. So he pretty much renunciated just because it was his rebellious phase.
A lot of black dragons in that fucking camp.
Oh, yeah. Wait, I missed that. Who renounced what citizenship? I don't want to explain the whole social experiment again. It took a while for me to explain that.
So, I'll give a very quick overview.
All right.
The Americans went, hey, guys, look, we're sorry. We're going to send you back. If you want to renounce your U.S. citizen, go to Japan. Here's this letter. Sign it, and we'll take you along the way. And they're like, oh, yeah, fuck these Americans. Ha-ha! Tricked you, bitch! Get on the bus. We're taking you to the lake.
We're taking you to the worst camp. So, we're taking you to the camp.
That's basically how the social experiment law worked.
Yeah,
that's why YouTube, that law is the reason YouTubers today can make prank videos in public.
All right, now we can take a chance to.
Just gonna walk by that.
Yeah, let's do that. So now let's take a look at the Japanese people in the camps who actually said, you know what, yeah, I'll volunteer to fight in the war. Most of these people signed up to fight in the war because they wanted to prove their loyalty to America and sort of give the American populace this impression that, no, not all Japanese people are going to sabotage you. So these Japanese Americans would volunteer.
Now, here's a question real quick. This is all before or after 9/11? Or not 9/11, not 9/11, Jesus Christ. Pearl Harbor.
We're well after Pearl Harbor at this point.
Okay, I was double checking.
Right.
I was double checking.
Because it's kind of hard for these people to volunteer to fight in the war when the war hasn't started.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what kind of popped America into like, let's fucking help these guys. All right, come on.
So the Japanese who decided to
planes and shit,
who enlisted and volunteered, they were all stuck in this unit called the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. That was all Japanese. I think there were Japanese in other units, but this one was special because it's all Japanese. It gets sent to fight in Europe because, of course, they aren't going to send it to fight Japan. And so they go to Europe, and they actually become the most highly decorated U.S. military unit of that size in World War II.
I did hear about them in a World War II museum. There's one in Eglin Air Force Base. They talked about an entirely Japanese unit.
Yeah, so the 442nd goes out there and kicks Italian and German butt. They're one of the highly decorated unit. One of their forces end up liberating a satellite branch of Dachau concentration camp, so they help free some Jews there. And then, while they're in southern Bavaria in southern Germany, during this stage of World War II, sort of Germany doesn't want people to find out about the concentration camps. So as the Allied forces move closer and closer to the camps, the guards will round up the Jews and force them on a march to another camp even further out, or a march just to have them all die by marching. The 442nd come across
the Trail of Tears all over again.
Yeah, the 442nd come across this death march where you have these German guards marching these Jews out to die, and then they kill the German guards and free the Jews that were being forced to march. So the 442nd just go out there, kick butt, and just like freaking superhero stuff right there, liberating concentration camps. So that's what the Nisei, Japanese American soldiers, ended up doing. So that regiment ends up making a lot of people go, hey, wait a minute, maybe these guys aren't traitors. So 1945, there's this person named Endo, I forget her first name, but she's suing the United States over their decision on the Korematsu case, where they said that, yeah, we can just round up people. Eventually in 1945, her case passes. Endo versus the United States passes, and the Supreme Court says, you know what, I guess we can't hold people against their will without charge. And so the camps are declared over, except this is a story of suffering, so it's not over yet. The camps begin to get shut down one by one. People are given $25 and a train ticket back to their old homes. For the people who do go on their train tickets and manage to find their homes, for the most part, their homes are destroyed. The glass is shattered, the windows are shattered, the natural elements, wind, rain, etc. have destroyed the homes, their businesses are gone, they have like signs that say, you know, we don't want no Japs in here type stuff. Their boats are unusable, they have nothing to do, and for the end of the 1940s into the 1950s, the Japanese-American demographic in the United States is extremely poor because they have to start all over again from scratch. There are elderly people and families with young children who can't afford to go over to their homes just yet. They can't make the move. So a lot of people stay in the camps even while the camps have ended. They're free to go. They stay in the camps because they don't have anywhere else to go to. Eventually, Tule Lake ends up becoming the last camp to close down, but the federal government's like, okay, you gotta get out. You can't just live here rent-free. So they start shutting down services one by one, like, okay, no more eating. Okay, you can't use the toilets anymore. And eventually, once all the lights are down, like, there's nothing left, it's like they have to use force to get the people out. They just kick out the elderly and the children. And who knows what happened to them after that. Eliminating services, elderly people, Tule Lake, Endo versus the United States. Oh, it should also be noted that only around 30% of the United States population approved of letting the people in the camps go free in 1945. So there's that. Stores, homes, boats vandalized. There were a total of 2,000 recorded deaths in the camps overall. Did I say over? I meant under. Just under 2,000 deaths in the camps. And then things only really started to pick up in 1988 under the presidency of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan signs the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which pays $20,000 to every single camp survivor. And he sort of, in his speech, he says, this isn't actually really enough. This doesn't repay the damages done to your lives by this camp system, but this is like a formal apology. But, you know, so Ronald Reagan being a bro for doing that. And that comes to the end. I have a few quotes from some newspapers, if you want, of, like, what the newspapers were saying about the camps, if you want to hear those.
Yeah, sure. Sounds
All
great.
right. This is a quote from a man named Austin E. Anson, Managing Secretary of the Salinas Vegetable Grower Shipper Association. He says, "We're charged with wanting to get rid of the Japs for selfish reasons. We do. It's a question of whether the white man lives on the Pacific coast or the brown men. They came into this valley to work, and they stay to take over. If all the Japs were removed tomorrow, we'd never miss them in 2 weeks, because the white farmers can take over and produce everything the Jap grow. And we do not want them back when the war ends either." From Henry McLemore, columnist. I forget what paper he wrote for, though. "I am for the immediate removal of every Japanese on the west coast and to a point deep in the interior. I don't mean a nice part of the interior either. Herd them up, pack them off, and give them the inside room in the Badlands. Personally, I hate the Japanese, and that goes for all of them."
Wow.
The Los Angeles Times. "A viper is nonetheless a viper, wherever the..." Oh, by the way, this should be noted. No Japanese American in the internment camps were ever charged with any treason or betrayal or sabotage type acts. Los Angeles Times. A viper is nonetheless a viper wherever the egg is hatched. So, a Japanese American born of Japanese parents, nurtured upon Japanese traditions, living in a transplanted Japanese atmosphere, notwithstanding his nominal brand of accidental citizenship, almost inevitably, and with the rarest exceptions, grows up to be a Japanese and not an American. Thus, while it might cause injustice to a few to treat while it might cause an injustice to a few to treat them all as potential enemies, I cannot escape the conclusion that such treatment should be accorded to each and all of them while we are at war with their race. Los Angeles Times. Also, there's a lot of Los Angeles Times excerpts here. Since December 7th, there has existed an obvious menace to the safety of this region in the presence of potential saboteurs and fifth columnists, close to oil refineries and storage tanks, airplane factories, army posts, navy facilities, ports, and communication systems. Under normal, sensible procedure, not one day would have elapsed after Pearl Harbor before the government had to proceed and round up and send to the interior points all Japanese aliens and their immediate descendants for classification and possible internment. The Atlanta Constitution. Not the Constitution of the state, but the paper called the Atlanta Constitution. The time to stop taking chances with Japanese aliens and Japanese Americans has come. While Americans have an innate distaste for stringent measures, everyone must realize this is a total war, that there are no Americans running loose in Japan or in Germany or Italy, and there is absolutely no sense in this country running even the slightest risk of a major disaster from enemy groups within the nation. Washington Post. There is but one way in which to regard the presidential order empowering the Army to establish, quote, military areas from which citizens or aliens may be excluded. That is to accept the order as a necessary accomplishment of total defense. Los Angeles Times. As a considerable number of Japanese, no matter where born, there is As to a considerable number of Japanese, no matter where born, there is unfortunately no doubt whatever. They are for Japan. They will aid Japan in every way possible by espionage, sabotage, and other activity. They need to be restrained for the safety of California and the United States. And since there is no sure test for loyalty to the United States, all must be restrained. Those truly loyal will understand and make no objection. The Los Angeles Times. The Japs in these centers in the United States have been afforded the very best of treatment, together with food and living quarters far better than many of them ever knew before, and a minimum amount of restraint. They have been as well fed as the Army and as well or as better housed. The American people can go without milk and butter, but the Japs will be supplied. Los Angeles Times. As a race, the Japanese have made for themselves a record for conscienceless, treachery unsurpassed in history.
You good? You having a stroke over there?
Yeah. Whatever small theoretical advantages there might be in releasing those under restraint in this country would be enormously outweighed by the risks involved. I believe that was a quote against releasing Japanese back out into the public after World War II. So those were my newspaper excerpts.
Wow. That's a lot of information, dude, all at once.
But that brings to the conclusion. Oh, I should also note that they were allowed to bring what they could carry. So you see a lot of blankets and stuff like that. A lot of people like to use these images of like people in these bedrooms that look real fancy. That's just because they were able to carry all that. It wasn't the situation for most people in the camps. Any questions? Any reactions? Anything Teacher Radix can help you with?
To be quite honest with you, man, you did a fantastic job. Like, I don't really have many questions.
Oh, thank you.
You did a good job. Anything I may have had, you actually kind of answered it.
I try.
So I was trying to think most of the time, like, oh, let me try to think of a question here, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, but then this sounds like it's going to lead into that question.
Oh yeah. Oh, I should also note.
I wait 5 minutes, and there it was.
I should also note that even though no Japanese American was charged with betrayal, treason, whatever, the American population didn't think that because there was one case where an innocent person was charged with treason. And it wasn't until about Gerald Ford's administration that they realized, oh, this actually is more of a patriot. Because there was this Japanese American woman, Japanese ethnicity, born in America, moved to Japan for education. World War II breaks out. Japan doesn't have too many people that speak English, but they want someone on the radio stations to send propaganda messages and leaflets to Japan, to America. So they take this woman and sort of force her to do these radio broadcasts that the American soldiers eventually call Tokyo Rose. And Tokyo Rose is eventually Tokyo Rose is used as sort of this boogeyman that, see, this is a Japanese American woman who's betrayed us. Turns out she just did it so she could survive. The Japanese took away a lot of her rights while she was living in the country. And she would move back to America after the war and then be hated, but she wouldn't move back to Japan, I don't think. And there was a lot of investigation, a lot of falsified documents, but it wasn't until Gerald Ford stepped in when was he the president? 60s, 70s or 80s? Somewhere in that line, in modern day, as far as relatively to World War II, steps in and pardons Tokyo Rose after, there's not enough evidence that she was actually a traitor. So how's the pizza? Oh, did my Discord freeze? Did my Discord freeze or something? Twisted, you there? Oh, there he goes. Oh, he's returned. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Okay,
yes,
all right.
Now I can hear you.
All right.
Jeez, I was like, the fuck is going on? I kept saying hello, hello. But then I went and looked at your stream, and I couldn't hear myself in your stream. I was like, is it me?
So, what did you last hear from me before the internet cut out?
You just were finishing up about Tokyo Rose.
Did I mention Gerald Ford pardoned her, and there was documentation forgeries and stuff like that?
I heard that on the stream.
Then you get the gist.
So that's good.
All right, by my watch, you have 30 minutes or so, under 30 minutes to prepare for your stream coming up.
Oh yeah, guys, Twisted Ambition stream. I might see if I can get Ultrox somebody else to join me.
There is a link to Twisted's Twitch in the description. I prepared for that. So,
hey,
if you want to catch Twisted not too long after this stream, go on over there. Open that up. Get that in a tab ready.
Twisted will appreciate it.
I think that wraps up. This stream its archive version will be put up on Radix repository for safekeeping. Yeah, I think that ends. I wish I could end it on a happier note. I feel depressed after teaching this.
I mean, it's history. It's we have to learn from. If we don't, we're going to repeat it again. Which, if we want to talk about something, I mean, we're kind of repeating it. Just kind of touch on that for 1 second. Let y'all do his own fucking. Let you guys do your own research. We're kind of reliving that with the whole Trump's camps, because I started reading about that today, and that is a shit show. And honestly, I'm not gonna say it's Trump's fault. He made the order, but he puts me up to charge of it, and they just kind of threw everything together real fucking fast. To the point that there's a story I read, and I gotta do some fact checking on this, to be honest with you. So this is kind of where shit gets dicey, because I don't know if it's true or not. But supposedly they went into ICE, I forget what they actually stands for. Actually kidnapped a American child.
Oh man.
Of Mexican descent. Basically just racially profiled him off the street and took him.
There's one, boys. Let's get him.
Yeah. No. It's joking, but that's apparently essentially how it's exactly happening. It's, hey, that kid looks like he has darker skin. Look at the skin chart. That could be a Mexican.
There really is no non-depressing way to end this stream, is there?
No. There's really not. But again, I still stand by my whole it's history. We got to learn. It's not depressing. It's just something it's part of our history. We have to learn from it and move on.
Well, thank you, Twisted, for taking time out of your day for joining the stream here today.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. You know me.
And thank you,
chat. I am a long time supporter of the Primus Radix, the Radix Prime.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it here at Radix Prime. And thank you to all the viewers out there, everyone who's dropped in and talked in the chat. You guys are the homies for clicking on something with a title like this and listening to Jar Jar Binks and Shrek.
I changed the picture again. Yeah, you already got it.
Yeah.
I love how you're keeping up to date on like me changing my picture.
Yeah.
I think I changed it 4 or 5 times in that stream.
It's how it's done.
It's how we do.
I've been having difficulty using OBS to show my Discord screen, but I finally found the setting I needed to do so I could do this.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you one thing. What I use Streamlabs OBS, and it's so much more. It's so much better. It's actually optimized.
Oh.
I used to get lag spikes constantly, and it's because I had to manually set up my OBS stuff. Streamlabs literally does it all for me, and I run such a high kilobit rate that I could have probably streamed without upgrading my internet.
Oh man.
And it's so low impact. OBS, the actual program you're using, would take about 8% of my computer's memory.
Mine's taking 20% right now.
Yeah. It would take
doing a Discord. It's just Discord on the screen.
But my Streamlabs, it is taking up 2.
Oh man.
Dude, you got to give it a shot. It's free. I'm saying I'm plugging it right now, but it's been amazing. Plus, you can have your chat is right there on the screen with it. You hit stream. It says, "What do you want to name your stream?" You hit play. You type your name in, and then hit live, and you can have your editing screen here on the left side. You have your chat. Not only that, you can add stuff to it, like your donations, like subscribing or following, or so on and so forth. It's more optimized for Twitch and streamers, of course. But it'll work great for what you need it for as well.
Yeah, I'll probably look into that.
It's amazing. Anyways, this is an after stream chat. This is a Radix After Dark chat,
Just some things to catch the audience on, I guess. Radio Radix returns on the 27th. Next week, from this point in time, it's at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Laser KOALAS podcast has moved to 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time instead of 7 o'clock p.m. And I believe it's the 28th, Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, will be the next Laser KOALAS podcast. So if you want to tune into those, feel free to. I implore you to. And then Twisted has his Twitch streaming schedule in the Discord server if you haven't joined the Discord server yet. And you can keep up with his Twitch. Again, links in the description. And yeah, I think that's it.
Things are going great over there if you want to come join.
All right.
Things are going really good on Twisted side.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. And I don't know how to end stream, so I'm just going to press the button to stop.